Welcome to Tanalan, and for today's episode we'll be doing an interview with Lyndon Charlie Bloom on the topic of the sparkle of a new relationship is only temporary. So it's quite an interesting topic. I won't go into more detail than that. Watch, enjoy, and do provide some feedback via the survey form which I've provided below in the video. If this is via podcast, feel free to reach out to me directly. Enjoy.
Let's begin with the topic that you have in your book. The sparkle of a new relationship is always temporary. Now, that's interesting. A few things came to mind. It's sort of, defining things. Firstly, what is the sparkle? I mean, I have an idea, but for everyone, maybe the definition of the sparkle might be different. So, what is the sparkle you write about, and how is it characterized? And then we'll dig through a little bit more.
Well, the sparkle is usually very intense in the beginning of a relationship because people have cherished the romantic notion that they're going to find the one. And when they fall in love, it's like this great quest, and they finally found the treasure. And I always tell people when they're in the infatuation stage, it's so exciting and the visionary is so active, to ride it to the dunes. Just enjoy it for all it's worth. But don't kid yourself into thinking that it should last the whole relationship, because everybody has to leave the Garden of Eden eventually.
Right.
And that's when it gets really interesting, because you're challenged to fill in the gaps where you had made up Prince Charming and Princess Charming with your imagination, and you didn't really know them well yet. And so this is a way to allow the disillusionment to take place. It's a little sad. There's some grief there. And sometimes people lose their relationship at that point. But this is the opportunity for a more mature love, and to see who they really are, and to see their beauty and their magnificence and their gifts, and also their shadow side, and to love them as is. And of course, they're discovering ours about the same time, and to allow them to love as is, and to see that we're all such a mixed bag.
Right. So then, is it fair to say that this sparkle is formed as a result of lack of understanding of our partner, and our imagination sort of taking hold in terms of this is what a marriage is like, having a view of an unrealistic view of marriage. Is that what causes it? Is that a reasonable way to sort of sum it up?
Yeah.
Either way.
I think that people are drugged in the beginning of the relationship, that the hormones and the endorphins are pouring out of their brain, and they're a little daffy and confused.
Right.
Do you see? And so it's nature's trick to get us to keep procreating that species and to keep the species going. But it's time limited. Some people get weeks, a lot of people get months, some people get a year or even more.
Yeah.
And then that dopamine and all of those hormones, they calm down and they settle down, and the realistic view of our partner comes into focus finally.
Right. Okay. So it's part of our, I guess, psychological, physiological makeup that kicks in just to allow us to form that connection, and then steps away.
Yeah, it fades. Some people think that the best part of their relationship is at the very beginning and the falling in love stage, and then it's all downhill after that. And I certainly don't believe that. I think that there's ups and downs, and that can be a glorious, the romantic infatuation stage. But I think the deepening of the relationship can also be quite beautiful, and that it can keep getting better and better and better. It's not, the research shows that a lot of people, really a large number of people, feel that the best part of their relationship was the very beginning. I find that so sad.
Yeah.
They haven't been working to keep it fresh and alive and growing.
So do you think it's about setting your expectations right up front as to what really to expect, so you don't feel the shock? So what would you recommend? Say the average couple who comes and sees you, and they're just about to maybe make a serious commitment, or they already have, and they say they're getting married, and do you tell them, ignore the sparkle, don't really give it much value? Like, what? How do you prevent yourself from experiencing a shock when it's gone?
I think it's important to enjoy the sparkle. Enjoy
Okay.
it, but know that there's other times coming that aren't quite as wild, and it's a good thing because we're so obsessed in the
Yeah.
infatuation stage. They forget to eat, they don't sleep, they neglect their work. If they
Yeah.
have kids, they can sometimes neglect their kids. But I think you're right on when you say to get real sooner. I think it's important to get real sooner and to talk about where you're going and what you're looking for and who you are. And a lot of people in our field don't think that you should get so real so soon, that you should keep the image up for the first several months. But we're not from that school of thought. We talk about putting your worst foot forward, and not on the first date necessarily, but soon, at the beginning,
Yeah.
to let the partner know some of the things about you that maybe aren't so gorgeous and flattering, but that's important to get real early on.
Right. So for those that haven't, say, entered marriage, and they haven't even experienced the sparkle, or as you put it within the book, um, so would you say that once this goes, then it's like marriage becomes dull? And I'm not saying suggesting it is, but it's like someone may interpret it that way, right? Is that okay? Cool. You have this phase where everything's exciting, it's fantastic, it's really enjoyable, and then it disappears. So then what must be left behind is, you know, boring, monotonous, and dull and sad. So based on the interactions you've had with couples, what does that next phase look like?
We call that next phase the stage of disillusionment.
Right.
And that kind of says, that word sort of defines what the stage is. There is a disillusioning of the belief or the expectation that this is going to last forever. Because there really isn't anything you can say to somebody who's in the grip of infatuation that's going to cause them to do anything to prepare themselves for what is likely to be a pretty inevitable shift at some point, because they're so possessed by it's almost like they're just drunk with ecstasy. They're really ecstatic. And at that point, there really isn't anything that anybody can say to you that's going to excuse me, I just want to shut the ringer off here because it's distracting. So there isn't anything anybody can say to you that's really going to influence you to want to get out of it, or that you even can get out of it. Mm-hmm. So the thing that I say to people when they come in, and because we don't just see people in our workshops or in our practices that are suffering or struggling. Sometimes we see people, like we did an intensive last week with a couple who are engaged, about to get married, and they are in bliss, both of them. Yeah. And they came in and they want to, they want to really kind of anchor this experience so that they can get off on a solid foundation in their marriage, which I think is great.
Yeah.
So what I say to people like that, who are in that state, is 5 words. I say, enjoy it while it lasts. And that, without telling them that it's not going to continue, that statement kind of plants the seeds that, you mean it's not going to last forever? Well, probably not. I have known couples who have been in in a very deep, gratifying, fulfilling state of mutual love for a long, long period of time. I mean, it doesn't mean that there's going to be a crash. I don't want you to think that what we're saying is, you know, there's this state of elation and then there's a crash where you just kind of sink down in the bottom of the abyss. No, it's not like that at all. It's generally a more gradual awakening to other aspects of this person's personality. You know, we're all in our best behavior when we're with somebody with whom we want to make a positive impression. That's natural. Yeah. But at some point, we become more comfortable, more relaxed in the relationship, more trusting. We allow other aspects of our personality to show up that we hadn't thought were particularly attractive. So we were trying to conceal them, but you can't conceal everything forever. You know, you can't. It's not possible. It's going to leak out. You're going to expose those shadowy aspects of yourself. And so basically, you know, we just want people to be aware that it's great that you're in love with each other, and it takes a while to get to know all of who this person is.
And it takes a while for us to get to know who we are. A lot of people get together in their 20s, they're still really young, and they don't exactly know who they are. And so to have some curiosity and wonder about yourself and the other person, which is one of the blissful parts about the falling in love infatuation stage, is there's so much discovery going on. So in answer to the question that you asked, does it have to get dull and boring after the infatuation? Absolutely not. It can be an exciting trip throughout the relationship if people have that curiosity and wonder. If they have the belief, it can end up being a self-fulfilling prophecy, the belief that it's going to get dull and boring, and particularly if the couple makes the commitment to have comfort and security and predictability be their highest value in their relationship, it will get a bit dull and boring. But if they have a growth commitment, that they're each going to personally be growing, discovering, lifelong learners, that's going to keep the relationship vital, and it won't get boring and dull.
Yeah. Okay, that's really that makes sense. It's really valid. It's just that the reason I sort of made it sort of so black and white in terms of questioning, is it going to be this hard fall? Is it going to be, you know, crashes? Like, I guess someone who hasn't experienced that, they might be thinking, you know, some of these things like, oh God, you know, what can I expect? So setting that expectation a little bit. So I wanted to clarify that a little bit more. Charlie, you were about to say something?
Well, I just wanted to add that what you expect is it's not the only thing that's going to determine what you experience. Although if you do expect things to go a certain way, then you can, you know, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
So expectations can be, you know, an important part of the process. I think the factor that determines the most significant factor that determines how this relationship is going to go in terms of, is it going to stay vital and passionate and alive and fulfilling, or is it going to go flat? Is it going to be boring? Are we going to get tired of each other? That factor has more to do with the willingness that we have to allow ourselves to be authentic in the relationship, or whether we are attached to having to be a certain way in order to continue to please my partner. In other words, if that image that we put on that made that person attracted to us is something that we think we need to wear all the time, or else, you know, they're going to see that that's not all of who we are. And so we get really committed to being the person that we think we're supposed to be. that gets old at some point. You can't do that forever. One of the reasons that people want to be in a relationship in the first place is because they want to be with somebody with whom they can just be themselves.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, that's what we all want. So if you're there, but you're afraid to be yourself because you believe this person won't be as willing to accept you if they see that, you know, sometimes you can be impatient, or sometimes you can have a bad mood, or sometimes you can get into self-pity, or sometimes you can be controlling. If you're really careful about, I've got to make sure that they never see, I've always got to be this person, and they've always got to be the person that I want them to be. That's what takes relationships into the zone of boredom and monotony, and when they stop being juicy and alive.
Yeah.
It's when two people can risk being themselves authentically that the relationship, if they can handle each other's shadowy stuff without running away or without making them bad and wrong, then they will get to a point where they can both be themselves, and it never gets boring. Because when you're being yourself is always in process of evolving, of growing, of changing. So it never gets boring, because at any given moment, yourself is going to be someone other than it was yesterday afternoon or will be tomorrow. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess what that makes me realize is the importance of, say if a young couple getting to know each other, they've been together for a certain period of time and they're considering a major commitment such as marriage. Then just like, based on that, it makes me think, have you both had enough time to really just let your guard down and, like you said, be yourself, expose your true selves to one another? Have you seen the true self of the other? Have you experienced a lot of...
And have you allowed them to see all of who you are? And like Linda said, it's not like you put out all your dirty laundry the first date, but you gradually allow yourself to expose certain aspects. You acknowledge that, hey, sometimes I can be moody, or sometimes I can feel insecure, or but you don't necessarily talk about it. You just allow that aspect of yourself to be expressed when it comes up, and then you deal with it.
And I advise the young couples who are in infatuation stage and thinking about getting married to give themselves a chance to get out of the infatuation stage and wait until they hit a little difficult time, which will likely prompt becoming more real and letting some of that shadow side show itself, so that when they make that commitment, they have a fighting chance for it to be a lifelong commitment, because they really know who they are and they know who their partner is, and the chances of knowing each other well enough to know what the core values are, where each are going in their life, if you're going in the same general direction, is much greater. I think when people marry in the early months, when they're still sort of walking on the pink cloud and they're wide-eyed, that they're headed for some shocking news to occur. And if they've given themselves a chance to really know each other well, there's going to be some disillusionment, but I don't think it'll be of the awesome, shocking type of people who get married in just months into their relationship.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get to before. It's sort of like, how do you, like, what are ways in which you can prevent this transition from being such a shock to maybe more of a gradual? And I think some of those points you raised really cover that, in terms of, do a little bit of work beforehand, and by setting expectations, not so much sitting down, someone telling you, this horrible thing's going to happen, this is going to happen. It's more so, okay, oh, wow, I've actually gotten to know this person really well. I know how they respond in this scenario. I know how I respond myself. I never realized I would be like this. Or, these are the habits we have. This is what happens when I get really comfortable. And I think, so just, it's hard to sort of, like, come up with all of them, but I think having enough experience and time together is something that can potentially help set those expectations in an indirect way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Some years ago, I worked with a woman who was just grief-stricken because she was so deeply in love with this man, and they were compatible in a lot of ways, and they had a wildly blissful infatuation stage, and she thought they were going to be together forever, and they never had the conversation about having children.
Yeah.
And they were together for a considerable amount of time, where I just assumed you would have that conversation. And she thought that because they were so wildly in love and they were so compatible and they had so much in common, interests in common and values in common, she assumed that he was going to do family with her. And when she finally did bring it up and he said, "No, I don't intend to ever have children," she went into shock because she was committed to being a mom. And they had to break up over this issue. But my take on it was, gee, that was a long delay. Why don't you get some of these important things about what you want to do with your life out in the open early on?
Yes.
I've been looking at a chapter in our first book. Have you got this book, 101 Things I Wish I Knew?
Yeah, he's got that.
So this is actually, if you want to just bring it up to camera so for those watching they can see it, this is the book where these topics are from. So 101 Things I Wish I Knew When I Got Married. Yeah.
I want to read a piece from a chapter in here that really speaks to what we're talking about. It's chapter 44, and the title of it is, "If you think you're not the person I married, you're probably right." And it talks about a couple who have been through this infatuation stage, and their other aspects of their personality have begun to reveal themselves. So I want to just read like one paragraph from it.
Yeah, please.
"When we marry, we are full of illusion and expectation. Generally, we haven't been together for enough years to know each other fully. And that's even people who have known each other for, a while, because we're operating from that image, until we really feel secure in the relationship. Then it starts to reveal other aspects. As our partners grow and change, which they inevitably do, and reveal themselves, we are challenged to adapt and accept them for who they are. To the degree that we can do this, we are likely to experience the same from them." Mm-hmm. So when I can accept you, and that doesn't mean I'm tolerating bad behavior on your part, but I'm accepting, that you're not perfect, and you've got, your certain flaws or weaknesses, as everyone does, including me. This does not mean, of course, tolerating behaviors that are disrespectful or abusive, but accepting aspects of their personality that are not in keeping with our concept of the ideal mate. Change is the only constant in life. In other words, the only thing you can count on to not change is change itself. Marriage provides a great curriculum for learning to accept the inevitability of change in each other, in ourselves, and the world. Mm-hmm. So that's chapter 44.
Right. Brilliant.
Yeah,
no, that's actually
that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is why I picked this topic, because I think it's good to be aware of it. When sometimes people say, well, I don't know what to expect, how things would change. It's sort of like, well, how do you paint a picture for someone in terms of how to prepare themselves in a realistic way, right? Rather than just telling them this is this and this and this is going to happen. It's more so, what steps should you take? How should you approach, say, preparation for a major commitment, so that you give yourself the best chance of success. So when things do change, that you're not sort of, it's not like the rug's been pulled from underneath your feet.
That's right. That's
yeah.
right. That come as a shock or a surprise. It's like, oh yeah, well, that's right. This is the way it goes.
When I teach our workshops, I tell stories on myself about how naive I was when I first met Charlie. I was just in my early 20s, do you know, when we first moved in together. And I was more of a kid, really, than an adult, and full of romantic illusions. And one of the things that I tell the students in my class is, I thought, well, we trust each other, we're going to partner, and the trust is just going to get better and better and better and better and better and better and better. And I didn't know that it's up and it's down, that sometimes there are disappointments and there are broken agreements and there are misunderstandings and there's sometimes arguments, and the trust can sag a bit down. And it was shocking to me in the beginning when these difficulties would happen. And I thought, you know, where is my Prince Charming? I thought he was going to be always steadfast and true. Yeah. And then I said, oh, that's so sad. I thought I got the prize, and I didn't get the prize. And then I thought, as soon as I had that thought that I didn't get the prize, I said, well, I'm not the perfect prize myself. And, you know, you get more realistic. The trust can sag, and it doesn't mean that you have to live with black marks on the purity of your relationship. It means more work to do. Big surprise. We need to build the trust. We need to be firmer about keeping our agreements, for instance, if we want to keep the trust really high.